Okay, today we're going to talk about what to do if your ex-girlfriend isn't interested in you at all. Now, normally I'm very methodical about the topics that I choose when I write an article or record a podcast or even film a video. But this one topic, even though I've covered it briefly before, I decided I was going to dive in deeper because this is something that I'm seeing a lot of men have trouble with. They're starting conversations with their ex-girlfriends and then things seem to be going well, and then all of a sudden their ex-girlfriend just stops responding. Days go by without a response. They try to come up with a really good text message to get a response and nothing works. Next thing they know, a couple of months have gone by and they're just sit in limbo wondering what can they do about getting their ex to even have a conversation with them, especially when it seems that their ex-girlfriend doesn't have any interest in them at all. And here's an interesting twist that you probably don't know about me. Most of my time is spent coaching women on how to get their ex-boyfriends back. Most of the clients I have are women, but I made a conscious effort to focus more on men so that they can get just as much attention as the women. The big problem or fly in the ointment is that I am a male. Therefore, I am not perfect at telling you the female psyche. Luckily for you, I have a gigantic private support group on Facebook of all the people who have purchased our programs and done coaching with us. 90% of the people in this Facebook group are women. So I figured, who better to ask than them? So I decided what I was going to do is poll the Facebook group of women where I would concoct a situation that I thought was the most difficult situation that you could possibly be in. So that's exactly what I did. Now, before I show you what this question was, and we get started into the meat of this video, the first thing I think you should be doing, no matter what situation you find yourself in, is stop by our website and take our Ex Recovery Chances quiz. It's a simple 2-minute free quiz designed to tell you what kind of chance you have of getting your ex-girlfriend back. Now, if this sounds like something you're interested in, all you have to do is simply look in the description link below this YouTube video and click on it. All you have to do is just pause the video, click on the link, go take the quiz, and then come back and finish the video. Okay, let's show you what that question was. So like I said, I came to poll the women in my private Facebook support group to basically ask them this question. What would an ex you had positive exchanges with but all of a sudden started ignoring have to do to get you to talk after not speaking for 3 months? In other words, if you were trying to get your ex-girlfriend back and things seemed to be going pretty well at the beginning, but all of a sudden she stopped talking to you and you made multiple attempts to reach out to her, but she hasn't responded in 3 months, what would you have to say or do to get her to respond to you and at least show a little bit of interest? Now, ultimately, when I run polls like this, I'm looking for patterns. Luckily, 108 people commented on the Facebook poll, so we had a lot of data to sift through. So after spending about a good hour and a half sifting through the data, it became clear that there were patterns. And even when you look at those patterns, there are even huge consistencies among the patterns. So let's talk about what some of those patterns are. Now, I want you to understand that every single one of the things that I'm about to say is a pattern we noticed from women who have responded to this poll. We don't necessarily agree with everything, but I wanted to get their take. What we will get to at the end of this video is when we look at the patterns and pick out the most consistent aspects of the patterns. In other words, these are the things, or these are the patterns that most of our women said. And based on that knowledge, we will be able to sort of concoct a situation in which it'll give you the best chance to have a conversation with your ex-girlfriend who is not interested in you at all. So without further ado, here are the patterns we noticed. Ask about something that you saw on your ex's social media account. Apologize. Show curiosity in what you have been doing. Show a new side of yourself or a life change. Send flowers. Focus on shared interests. Actions speak louder than words. Do a grand gesture. Call instead of text. Purposely friend zone yourself. Ask genuine, caring questions. Ask a great open-ended question, or give them space first. So obviously there's a lot to sift through here, and ultimately not all of these patterns are created equally. In fact, when you actually looked at all the patterns that I just listed, only 4 were just consistent among the 108 comments. In other words, some of the patterns we noticed didn't have enough clout to really be on the list, but I wanted to give you all the options possible from women's mouths themselves. So what are the 4 most important things that women say you should do to get an uninterested ex-girlfriend to pay attention to you? Well, in order from most important to least important, here they are. Thing number 1, apologize. Now, this is something that actually shocked me, quite frankly. I've been on record multiple times when I've coached women on getting their ex-boyfriends back not to apologize until the time is right. And I still think that's true to a certain extent. The situation that I composed for the women in the private Facebook group was basically you trying to get an ex-girlfriend to talk to you for 3 months without any success. Enough time has gone by to maybe warrant an apology, especially because most of the time if your ex-girlfriend is ignoring you, there's a reason for why she's doing it. So an apology might be the right approach. The trick is, what do you say and how do you apologize? Well, that's quite a good question. Ultimately, I think apologies have a tendency to get a little too open-ended. And what I mean by that is you have a tendency to send a text message apology that is gigantic and maybe is a bit too much for your ex-girlfriend. I think generally speaking, if you're going to apologize, you want to be genuine about whatever it was that you know that you did wrong. But the key component is not to get too open-ended. In other words, don't make your apology some 5,000 word text message. Make it short, sweet, and simple. But I also think when or how you do the apology is just as important as the fact that you are doing an apology. For example, you might have more success having an apology over a phone conversation as opposed to just texting it. It really depends on a lot of different factors. So I think the ultimate things that you need to keep in mind when you're going to apologize to your ex-girlfriend is enough time has had to have gone by to warrant the apology. Make sure the apology isn't too long, and make sure that you pick the right medium for the apology. This is more of a gut feeling type thing where you know your ex-girlfriend may be a lot more responsive to an open apology over the phone as opposed to over the text message. Again, you have to feel this out based on your own circumstances and your own relationship. Thing number 2, actions speak louder than words. Pretty closely behind apologies was this concept of actions speaking louder than words. Essentially, the sentiment here from the women in the private Facebook group was that, look, sometimes words aren't going to be enough. You need to do or take some action. And when I would press the women in the Facebook group to explain to me what they thought an action was, it could be something as simple as a grand gesture, but most of the time, which is really interesting, they said calling instead of texting is enough of a grand gesture in and of itself. In fact, multiple women cited the fact that a lot of times when they've been in this exact scenario, where they've been uninterested in someone, that person's best trick to get them interested was to get them on a phone. So they send a text message and then call them and leave a voicemail. And what's maybe interesting about this fact is that this is actually a strategy that I've been implementing right now with my coaching clients. Instead of focusing so much on text messages, I decided I'd take a chance and advise some of my clients to just try to call and leave a voicemail. We were very careful in how we crafted the voicemail, but to my great surprise, it's been quite successful. Every time they've left a voicemail, they've gotten a call back. And sometimes my clients have even called and then the ex just picked up. So sometimes a grand gesture in and of itself in a digital way with a phone call instead of a text is enough to make the difference. Now, one thing I'd like to point out is that when it comes to these kind of grand gestures like calling and leaving a voicemail for your ex-girlfriend, I would view it as a Hail Mary attempt. In other words, you've tried everything else first and it hasn't worked. In fact, when I actually structured the question to the Facebook group to gain these patterns and the women's advice, it was essentially a Hail Mary attempt. I was essentially saying, without actually telling them, what would have to work in the last case scenario or the worst case scenario to get you to respond and take it seriously. So I would only try phone calls if you feel like you've tried everything else first and you are willing to go for broke. Thing number 3, showing a new side of yourself or having a life change. So this is another one of those answers that caught me by surprise. A lot of women were straightforward in the fact they said that, look, if I'm ignoring someone for this reason, there's usually a good reason why, and it would have to take something miraculous for me to take them seriously. But one woman in particular kind of shedded some light on this concept of what would make her have to do that. She basically said they would have to go through an amazing life change, or something would have to happen that shows a new side of themselves. In fact, she even equated it to the fact that, look, I would have to be scrolling down my Facebook newsfeed and see a picture or something of them doing something that I never thought they'd be doing, and I'd have to stop. And that would make them interested. It wouldn't make them interested in and of itself to contact them, but it would make them interested, or maybe even more open to being contacted. So really, this is more of a social media game type thing. What you're trying to do is show a new side of yourself, or you're trying to show a massive life change that you've had. I've often talked throughout the history of this YouTube channel about human beings and their perceptions, and how when we date someone, we have these preconceived notions about what they are like. And a lot of times what we have to do is flip those preconceived notions on their head. In other words, if your ex-girlfriend thinks that you are selfish, maybe going out and volunteering your time, or helping the homeless, or doing a food drive type thing is what you would have to do to change that preconceived notion that she has of you. Now, the thing to keep in mind here is there's a million different ways to show these life changes. And sometimes life changes can be something as simple as getting a new job and showing that new job on social media. I can't tell you how often women said something along the lines of like, look, if he had some type of life event happen to him and I saw it, it would make me more open to listening to what he had to say. So you want to share your life, or at least make your life public to her on social media, so she can kind of get a window into what's going on with you. And what's interesting is, even if you've been blocked by your ex-girlfriend, they will still find a way to spy, or through the grapevine they'll hear about whatever is going on in your life. So it's worth posting and putting the effort in on social media. Thing number 4, ask genuine questions. Okay. Genuine questions were the final big pattern that we noticed. Every other pattern wasn't really that big. It just was, a couple of people out of the 108 said like, hey, yeah, let's do this or do this. Genuine questions had about 13% of the overall responses. So it was a big pattern that we noticed and couldn't quite ignore. But what do women mean when they say ask genuine questions? That's a good question in and of itself. I personally read this as being interested in what's going on in your ex-girlfriend's life. In other words, ask an open-ended question to your ex-girlfriend about what's going on in her life and show a genuine interest in it. And sometimes as men, this is hard for us to do. Often when we have conversations, we only want to talk about things that we're interested in. And even when we make a conscious effort not to do that, we find that ourselves pulled or even bored when she's talking about maybe whatever work thing is going on that we really don't care about. That's not gonna cut it though. You actually have to show genuine interest in her life. And the other thing I'd like to point out to you is oftentimes one of the best ways to quote unquote show genuine interest is to listen. And I truly mean listen, and understand every nuance of what she's saying and try to find that one need she has that is unmet. Because if you can meet that one unmet need she has that no one else can, it's going to connect the two of you and make her more attracted. You're going to be that one person that can fill that need. So what is a good example of an unmet need that you can meet? Well, the key to finding that unmet need is by asking genuine questions, asking and caring about her answers. So let's say that you have a conversation with your ex-girlfriend and she mentions to you that there's this guy at work who is stealing her sales. That's a problem, and that irks her and makes her angry. But let's say that you actually do some homework yourself and say, look, this is what you can do if he does this again. If he tries to steal your sales at work, you can actually go and do these type of things to prevent it from happening and make sure there's a consequence for him. By doing this, by trying to meet that sort of problem she has, that unmet need of like needing to vent or needing some sort of idea of how she can handle the situation, she'll look at you in a new light. And I guarantee that's something that you really didn't think about doing when you guys were dating. Maybe you did, but maybe not at this level. And the key to understanding what those unmet needs are is by asking the genuine questions, by asking and taking a genuine interest in her life. And believe me when I can say women can pick up on if you care or if you don't. Hey there, thanks for getting to the end of this video. Now, if you haven't already, I want to make sure you stop everything you're doing and take the X Recovery Chances quiz I talked about at the beginning of this very long video. Now, if you're interested in taking that quiz, all you got to do is just simply look in the description link below this YouTube video and click on the link you see there. It will take you directly to the quiz and you'll get your quiz answers and you'll hopefully have some clarity on what your next steps will be. Also, if you haven't liked, commented, or subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do that. I would be eternally grateful. I'll see you next time.